Alright, making another video. Probably shouldn't, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to read some comments on Hothliday's videos just to give him my impression of what he tolerates other people doing in his name, in a way. But anyway, I did have a bizarrely assholey comment on my in my comment section. So I'll read that first, I suppose, and then have a little bit of a conversation about some of this interference stuff. So, modular forms. Who, again, these people think they have a right to rag about you without even introducing themselves in some way, saying who they are, what their qualifications are, anything like that, what it is they believe. They just talk shit. So he writes, I don't even know what this means, but not even, dot, period. In the form, he gave a link to a GIF. Well, I actually linked to a website explaining jamming, a brief explanation of jamming. So the link was on a website talking about what jamming is. In essence, it's sort of pointing out that jamming is essentially the same thing as interference, except you're just doing the destructive part. The jamming won't work if you're not in some way. You can't help but be destructively interfering, right? I mean, think about it. Even if you're on phase and you have two radio stations and they're exactly on phase, well, it's still not going to work because the signals are going to be different signals. They're going to be saying different things. It's going to get all screwed up. I mean, if they're out of phase, you can't tune in either one of them. All right. I gave a link to a GIF that used a sine wave adding up. So if that's what you want to describe it, that's fine. But yeah, okay, they're moving sine waves. And you think that's what a photon is. Well, that's okay. You can believe that. But you don't have any obligation to say, I have to believe that. Which contradicted what he said in the GIF show. So again, there's no contradiction. I mean, I showed it over and over again. I'm emphasizing how I believe in constructive interference in the sense that when two things go in and two portions of energy come out, that sounds perfectly sensible to me. You're the one suggesting that two things go in and nothing comes out. And then again, if you have to, the real point is if you have to really tell the truth, oh, there really isn't any destructive interference. The thing is either pushed this to the right or it's pushed to the left. Because we don't see the energy diminished in half. The radar guns aren't producing, say, 1,000 watts of photons. And, let's say you were at a distance where you could receive 50 watts. And you only receive 25. Like half the photons somehow destroyed themselves. Nobody believes that. Nobody believes the light that goes through the two slits is half as much light that went into the two slits. Nobody believes that. But that's what happens with real water waves. And that's what happens with sound waves. Sound destroys, when it destructively interferes, it destroys real energy. When you have a frequency inside of a guitar and it's the wrong frequency, it's not within the harmonics. That energy is destroyed. It's not kept in the box anymore. It's annihilated. Those are real things that happen in mediums. But it doesn't happen with this electromagnetic energy. You can't undo magnetism. You can't undo electricity. They're real forces that can't be destroyed. But again, I mean, it's just so obvious that when the green and the blue lines are out of phase, it's obvious how many bumps there are. That the frequency, if something wanted to detect bumps, it could see that there's twice as many of them. I mean, damn. It's just, you're just like, what the hell are you talking about? So I'm just saying, you don't see how this is rude for you to sit there and imply that somehow I said something about something that's outrageous or provably wrong. I didn't do any such thing, you cunt. All right. Then he denied. No, I never deny anything. I've denied no facts. I've denied no evidence. That's just a lie. All right? It's just a disgusting lie. I've deleted nothing. I've said some things that are wrong in the past, you know, that I found out were bad idea. But I've denied nothing. I've covered up nothing. I've retracted a few things I've said, and that's it. You can't use this crap I denied. It's just bullshit language. I mean, how do you think you have a right to be this rude to me? I don't know who the fuck you are. You can't really, you can't understand. I just have no obligation to accept you lying about what I did. You're allowed to lie. That two opposing waves add up to a standing wave. Where did I deny it? I said, yes, that happens with ropes. It happens in water. I went through the list of things it happens in. I said it happens in sound. Okay, actual molecules are going two different ways. They hit each other, nothing, you know, and they absorb each other's energy. In the terms, they absorb it in the sense that they go, or they spin, or they do something like that. But their momentum is converted into no movement. I mean, I can illustrate that. But I denied nothing. This is just such a lie. I clearly stated that this momentum exchange only works in a medium. You have to have a matter bit somewhere. The forces can't do it on their own. And you're the one claiming that, oh, it's preposterous for anybody to say so, when there's absolutely no evidence that it works any other way. Jesus. You're just such a creep. Yeah, such a creepy fuck. All right. So the point would be, is this whole destructive interference, it sort of comes down to is, let's say you had an object. Where is my object? Oh, wow, this camera's really focused for some reason. Shouldn't be that focused, but shouldn't be that zoomed in. It's a little bit laggy, too. Well, whatever. I should be able to get the point. Oh, man, it's so slow. Alright, don't watch the thing and just try to pretend it's not as pitiful as it looks. I mean, that is really, the camera's in the wrong position or something. I don't know what the hell's going on. Anyway, alright, so you have a thing just sitting all by itself. And then you have a thing, and it gets hit by a piece of energy. And so now the thing is moving this way. Alright, and then another piece of energy comes from the other direction. Alright, so the thing is going this way, but this other piece of energy hits it this way and cancels its momentum. So now it's not moving this way anymore because it got canceled here. And so now the thing goes back to just standing still. So it's the thing gets hit, the thing moves, gets hit by another piece of energy, stops moving. So there's a plus energy and a minus energy, in the sense there's an energy going this way and an opposite energy going the opposite way. And that's what you need to have. There has to be matter moving one way or matter moving the other way for a force to act on it. I mean, this is Newton stuff. Okay, I mean, stuff doesn't change until another force acts on it. And so what they're basically saying is they think photons have photon positive and photon negative energy. That somehow there's positon and negaton energy in the photon. And so then when two waves hit and they're lined up, then, you know, the two kinds of energy will somehow overlap and create this destruction of the photon. But again, we know from the facts, we know no energy is destroyed, no photons are destroyed. They're moved to a new location. So they're just denying a fundamental point here, which is this is nothing like water waves. Water waves annihilate actual energy. They don't move it left and right. In all of the photon experiments, all the electromagnetic radiation experiments, the energy is preserved. There's no energy destroyed. So the thing isn't canceling, it's pushing it to the left or pushing it to the right. Now, you showed absolutely no mechanism for any of this. Their theory has no mechanical description. They'll give you no illustration of how this is accomplished, this pushing. They'll show you this cancellation. They'll say, look, these waves cancel each other. But we already, like I just said, we know it doesn't cancel. So I'll play the Khan Academy guy. Because it's just vacuous. There's no model. There's no explanation. Nothing. And yet this guy will be this critical. This rude. Just rude. So their theory is something like this. So there's the thing that's going to get hit. All right, let's just say it's an electron. Maybe they agree that electrons get hit. This camera or something. Well, have to do. Yeah, I don't know why the resolution is so wrong resolution. Way too zoomed in. So what they're kind of saying is, so when the photons are in phase, okay, so when they're both coming in exactly the same, all right, so there's, and I'll just draw them as some other kind of mechanism to illustrate the point. Wow, that doesn't even fit on the camera. Yeah, this is really a small drawing tablet now. Puny. All right, so the two are in phase, so I'll just draw the other one below this one. So there's two things coming in and they're in phase. So the idea would be is, you know, that would mean they both push on, let's say this is a teeter-totter kind of thing, you know, it has a middle, and that you could say, okay, the two things come in and they both push it this way, so the energy is doubled, in the sense that this thing ends up moving to this new location. But if they're out of phase, right, the only good thing is I might just be able to move this over. Can't even do that. It's always just a little more complicated than I would like. All right, so if they're out of phase, so the thing is here. Now if they're out of phase, so the waves are exactly the opposite. I mean, the way they tangle them is this way. So the two waves are right on top of each other. So they end up just creating a DNA molecule kind of helix kind of look. But if they're out of phase, they're sort of arguing that the one photon pushes the thing this way, and the other photon has a pull force now. You know, it's like the pull energy. So the push energy or the up energy is hitting one part, and the back energy is hitting the other part. So the thing doesn't move forward. It just turns or twists or spins or does some other dopey thing. So it's like one piece of energy is hitting it and pushing it this way, and then the other, somehow the bottom of the wave means the thing goes this way. So it's almost, they're saying that a photon is like a magnet. All right, you know, and it has two poles. And that somehow if you can get it out of phase, then that's the same thing as having you know, the magnets reversed. So you're hitting it with, you know, just as much south energy as north energy, and therefore it doesn't move because you've repelled it and attracted it an equal amount or something like that. But there's no, like I said, they don't provide any of this explanation. I'm just making this up because that's all you can say. Well, how do you get this negative photon? How does the photon have an up and a down, like a water wave? How does it have a high pressure and a low pressure? How does it have a hot portion and a cold portion? So somehow the two portions can cancel. And again, we know they don't cancel. They're pushing the force somewhere else. The other force ends up hitting someplace else. It doesn't end up being destructively destroyed. It ends up being moved. So the whole rhetoric is just such crap. Because they say this destructive interference when it means nothing got destroyed. It got moved. So, I mean, it's just such... It's just amazing that he can talk this shit to me when their theory is so vacuous. I mean, it's vacuous. It says nothing. Okay, to add up to a standing wave. So again, the standing wave thing, they really think that photons can create a standing wave, that you can have a standing wave of photons, that they don't actually move from point A to point B. That like water waves, there's no, the photons aren't moving, it's just the water going up and down. You know, what water? How does a photon not be how is the photon not traveling? I mean, they really don't believe. They don't believe the photon actually moves. They think it just tells some piece of the ether to go up or some piece of the ether to go down. And we know when it gets to the antenna, there is no up and down. Antennas don't create negative energy in the antenna. Okay, they can only do positives. They can only do plus pressure. You'll never hit the antenna with radiation that's unradiation, negative, cold, down. They'll never hit a photon. You can never make electromagnetic radiation, because of the way you phase changed it or something, and create an antenna that says, I have a negative signal. I am now negative electrical potential to ground. That never happens. So, shit, it's just shit. Standing wave. Even though it was shown in the GIF itself. So somehow he says a standing wave is shown in this animation. That this shows a standing wave. We have two waves moving, and he calls that a standing wave being illustrated. I mean, ignore the red line. Just, where's the standing wave? I mean, the red line is a composite line. It's saying that, look, when the two humps are in this position, we're saying there's energy, and when the humps are in this opposite direction, there's zero energy. That's all the red line is doing. It's just representing what they say is the effect on an antenna, let's say, or the effect on your eardrum. They're saying you only get this part. You don't get this other part. Too stupid. And then he spouted pure gibberish nonsense about how, see, he thinks I'm just going to sit there and say, oh yeah, go ahead and lie on my board. Lie. I mean, say garbage like this. Why don't you make a video so I can type crap this rude to you? Have the balls to do that. Give me the courtesy to take your exact words and post them on your own fucking videos. I mean, man. About how moving closer to the light bulb. So this is amazing, right? I mean, I couldn't have made that argument simpler. How moving closer to a light bulb should make it darker. Where did I say that? Where, how does somebody fuck up something like that? What I said was, if you have two light bulbs, and you're standing in between the two light bulbs, you can never change how much light you'll be hit by, as long as you stay in between them. If you move out here, you can change it. But out here, in here, you can't. So no matter which way you move, the same, obviously it'll be hitting you from the back or hitting you from the front. I'm saying the total amount of light hitting you will always be the same. So as you move forward closer to this one, you're getting hit more in the front, but you're getting hit a lot less in the back. And if you move closer to this one, you're getting a lot more in the back and a lot less in the front. And this kind of fact goes way back. And I mean, I could establish it with every physics lecture ever done on the subject of gravity, because that's how gravity works. That's how all of these radial forces work. But it's certainly how light bulbs work. You could do the experiment yourself. Take a light meter, okay, that can see in both directions, and just move it closer to a light bulb and then further away towards another light bulb and see if you could ever make the light meter say less light. But you can't. Dummy. Oh, amazing. He calls it gibberish. A well-established fact of physics. Gibberish. Should make it darker. So again, I never said that. See, why you're saying I should let you lie on my board. I never said anything about anything being made darker. I said it stays exactly the same. How can you misquote somebody so egregiously? Because he is too dishonest. So again, now he says I'm too dishonest. And he doesn't back it up with a quote. He doesn't reference the video. He doesn't... Nothing. He just makes this grotesque claim, okay, with nothing. To make a... then he's too dishonest to make a decent acknowledgement of what others are saying. Acknowledgement of what others are saying. I pointed out that, look, if Hofladay wants to sit there and try to, make an experiment where he makes moving forces not move, well, good luck. Okay, he's going to put water in some location and say, look, it's not getting hit by any force that's heading right for it. the forces hitting right for it aren't going to hit it. Okay, good luck with that. I think he's got no chance. Oh, I'm not allowed to say that? No chance in hell? I deserve to be called a liar because I say I don't think that's possible. Amazing. All right, and then he says, after I deleted his comment, so nice to see him delete any comment that actually points out his stupidity. Right, I mean, no, you called me dishonest and made all kinds of grotesque little claims here about somehow I didn't explain something. Or I didn't, and then you said it makes something darker when I didn't say that. I mean, they're just lies. You just lied. All right, actually point out his stupidity so that he can leave anything else and claim there is no substance. So he thinks this comment was substantive, that he made a good point pointing out some real thing, showed me a real illustration of how the radar photons jump to the other locations, how they jump there. They don't destroy, they jump. And how this animation shows how they jump, even though it, oh yeah, that's right, this should be 4 times as big. If the radiation jumped, this line should be 4 times. The actual experiment, the audio signal, is 4 times. So this doesn't even describe the thing accurately, right? But of course, you're too stupid to understand the audio signal creates confusion because it's not a sine wave when it's going in the antenna. It's not doing any of this bullshit. It's only a positive to negative voltage. There is no, I mean, a positive to ground voltage. There's no up voltage and down voltage. There's no positive voltage, negative voltage in the antenna. The antenna only has one voltage, positive to ground. There's no negative component. Dumbass. All right. So, Quintucca and his trivial little Happy New Year bullshit. So, Stephen Bro type shit. Shit. Sorry. Short shitty. Anyway, I'll get rid of that. So I might as well read it, right? Yeah. Well, let me get the mindless marbles first, because let's get some shitty shit in here first. All right. As you've explained, if you have 2 opposing microwaves coming from 2 sides, they would overlap and create a standing wave. So again, they think it's possible that they have actual positive and negative tension in photons in some sort of medium. Like I said, they think it's a rope. Like rope theory probably would appeal to them because they think photons have tension, that they can have something going down and something going up and they meet and they cancel each other out. But again, it wouldn't work for this theory anyway because again, we know the energy isn't destroyed. So it's moved. So that theory just doesn't work. Standing wave doesn't explain where the destroyed energy went. I mean, even if it was possible to make this idiotic standing wave, you haven't explained where the energy went. All right, this means there will be constructive interference and constructive interference and destructive interference. And so again, how does this make any sense? The standing wave, frankly, has to be made out of, can't have both at the same time. I mean, if they're in phase, I'm just trying to think of the, one's going this way and one's going this way, they'll end up sort of just canceling each other out. So that doesn't even make much sense. All right, he does not understand conventional wave theory. It's not that I don't understand it, I don't believe it. And I certainly don't believe, I believe it applies to sound, and it applies to water, it applies to things in mediums. I've said, yes, that makes sense. What I'm saying is you trying to sit there and say that nothing is a medium, and photons are waving in the nothing. They're making the nothing do this, whatever this is, and that you can sit in some place in the middle and say, nothing's happening to me. No, you can't. All right, anyway, conventional wave theory, and things there wouldn't be any destructive interference. Yeah, I don't think there's any positive and negative component to a photon to cancel out. You can't cancel a photon, even though he says there will be. Wow, where did I do that? Liar. So absolutely ludicrous, he says. So, and Holiday never responds to this trash. So these assholes type this trash on his videos, and he doesn't say anything. So, in a way, Holiday, I'm saying you're endorsing this. You're endorsing what he's saying. He's saying I said something that's absolutely ludicrous. Well, why don't you say it in the video then? Why don't you explain what I said that's so absolutely ludicrous? Cunt. I mean, you don't understand. You leave this shit on your video. You have to take responsibility for it. You don't understand. That's sort of your obligation. You're allowing these people to imply that you're agreeing with them. That you think the same way they do. Just letting you know. I mean, that's what a rational person, and that's how a rational person interprets this shit. All right, so he says here, do you know any accurate way to measure the induced voltage and current from the microwave? The problem is always going to be you can't measure, that's like saying, do you know any way to measure a single photon or something? Because I think even a photomultiplier probably has to get hit by a certain level of energy before it trips an electron, and that minimum amount it won't see. But anyway, my hypothesis, so at least we have a hypothesis now, is that when you block one of the transmitters, the voltage at the middle peak should be 1/2 as much. Well, we know that Professor Lewin did it. See, they always have the audio signal. So again, are you stupid enough to think that the audio is the same as the carrier? Because if you're stupid enough to think they're the same thing, then you might be fooled, right? Well, Professor Lewin demonstrated. I mean, he covers one of them, that both of them are pointing to the middle. He has the thing in the middle, just like you're saying, and he has a signal of a certain amplitude. And then he covers one of them, and the signal drops to 1/4. Not 1/2, 1/4. So you don't have to have a theory here, because the experiment's been done. So, all right, the middle peak is where both transmitters are equal distance. Yeah, we already know that, the spot, which is why it should be 1/2 there. So again, you're so pretentious and so arrogant, and you haven't even watched that video. And then there's an older MIT video, the black and white one that's been part of this conversation. Apparently you didn't watch that either. Okay, it doesn't apply as clearly to other peaks to the side. Well, frankly, it has to, proportionally. No matter which peak I went to. Yes, obviously the audio gets a little dimmer, but at each one of the constructive interference locations, when both horns are open, it should make a sound. We'll call just 100% at that location. And when you cover one of them, it'll be 1/4. It'll always diminish by 1/4. This means that the total power should decrease by 1/4. Oh, I mean, and here he puts it in here now. So how can people make sense out of this? He says it should decrease by 1/2. What else do you think you're measuring? You're always measuring, okay, how much photon hit. So how do you say 1/2 1 minute and say, oh, well, now I'm going to use some power formula? Well, what do you think left the transmitter? Do you think something other than power left the transmitter? I mean, if I have a 1 megawatt transmitter, what do you think's leaving the transmitter? It's wattage that's leaving. Amazing. So anyway, so again, so what's your model of this? How this whole 1/4 thing happens, right? Because the only way the 1/4 thing can happen is you're taking the stuff that didn't go where it was supposed to go, and it went to these other locations instead. That's the only way you can have conservation of energy. So again, destructive interference isn't like water waves. Water waves, actual energy is destroyed. The wave is weakened. The wattage is destroyed by the process of the destructive interference. The same thing in sound. The sound doesn't move anymore when it destructively interferes. It doesn't have any sound, and it doesn't get moved to the other locations. Sound doesn't get, 4 times louder. Let's see, DraftScience was recently talking about whether the energy is hidden in the dead spots versus the energy is displaced from the dead spots. In the two experiments, they're different, right? We know in light, okay, there's no dedaton that hits the dark spot. There's no dedatons hitting there, right? But you kind of know from the radar experiment, we'll see that will all be resolved, because when I demonstrate the energy still there, it's still hitting the dead spots, you'll understand how, hey, doesn't make any sense, does it? So according to him, the power should only be 1/2 as much as the peak rather than 1/4. Well, again, you're not measuring the power. So this is another joke, right? He says P equals IV. You're not measuring the power of the actual photons hitting. You're measuring the power of your audio signal. Your audio signal is not in wattage. Your audio signal has no wattage. It's carried on the electricity. See, it's like doing Morse code. If I'm doing Morse code, it doesn't matter how many times I tap the tapper, I can't change the voltage of the electricity. I can't change the current. I can't change any of that. I can't change how many watts travel through the wire. Jesus. It's just stupid. Anyway, the power should be 1/2 as much at the peak rather than 1/4. The power is the same everywhere, because there's 2 photons hitting everywhere, because there's 2 sources of energy. So yes, every single location is getting hit with the same amount of energy, because there's 2 sources of energy. And all you're doing is playing a game with your stupid carrier signal and your ability to tune in the frequency. Alright, as much as the peak rather than 1/4. So this gives a decisive way to distinguish between conventional theory and his. Yes, and like I said, if they have done this experiment the right way without this carrier nonsense and just measure the power hitting the antenna, then you'll get the truth. You'll see what really happens. Alright, so now I'll read Steve's comment. I think you can see this, right? No, you can't! Yay! Doesn't really matter. There wasn't much to see. Minor amount of text to read. Alright, this is a pilot text. Even though some of what you say regarding particle theories makes me have to question some of my own ideas, hypotheses. Yeah, we ought to just make videos on your hypotheses. I mean, yes, I'll probably be critical because I'm right. So if your hypothesis is different than mine, you're probably wrong. Anyway, and likewise, DraftScience disagrees me on certain things. I'm nevertheless loving the wide open scope of the conversation and the debate. Yeah, except it's open to stuff where people are just ragging, and that's what it shouldn't be open to. I've had many theories bite the dust. In a strange way, I usually end up glad they bit the dust, because I know I was wrong isn't such a terrible thing. Yeah, it sort of just depends, right? I mean, sometimes it's really irritating, when you think you're onto something and you say, oh, I wasted all that energy, on a wrong idea. So at first I was trying to figure out how spin could work. I was making their model try to work with things they said existed, and I should have just understood that no, they were wrong about everything. So I should, I was originally trying to keep the idea that, oh yeah, electrons are spinning around and around really fast inside of an atom, but then I had to say, well, how do they do that exactly? And why don't they have that same kind of power when they're in free space? Why is the space inside the atom, well, anyway, I don't want to go into all that. And I just said, no, just stop thinking that way. And then you won't get a problem. Stop using their models, because their models are wrong. Stop trying to make their crap work, and just look at the evidence and see what the evidence indicates is possible. Anyway, in a strange way, I usually end up glad they did, but because I know I was wrong isn't terribly okay. Actually, it's a good thing to be able to finally rule out this or that and not have to wonder anymore whether this or this could be that. I guess I've learned to take criticism when it's well deserved. I frankly don't think there should be all this criticism unless people are arrogant and obnoxious and calling somebody liars because they don't believe in the same nonsense they believe in. That's where it just gets too fucking rude. I mean, there's absolutely no evidence that gives anybody the right to call somebody an idiot because they don't believe photons are waving, that they have a positive and a negative component that somehow can cancel each other. Because you don't have any evidence of that. You don't have any model of how that works. How it actually works. And because it's kind of painful when the criticism comes from someone else, I like to think that I try to disprove my own ideas before I embarrass myself telling the world. Yeah, frankly, though, it's sometimes really good to get it over with. So if you're wrong, see, like what Hathaway did with his video with this whole water thing and the standing wave thing. I still say it would have been better if he said, threw this idea at somebody and said, what do you think? You know, just to see if somebody could point out the obvious, which is, so you think photons can be turned into a standing wave? I mean, you really think that in the real universe, the photons are just sitting in one place going up and down? You think that's possible? Anyway, only to be shot down 5 minutes later. However, I mean, they move at the speed of light. It's like, how does people keep denying their momentum? They have momentum, and their momentum is their movement. So how can they be standing anywhere? They couldn't accomplish their get somewhere job. However, I've still made that mistake enough times to be even more curious before explaining my own ideas. I'm always curious. I'm always conscious that I could have made a ridiculously stupid mistake. Well, you know, it's really difficult. I mean, some of these questions are really tough, like the drag issue. I had to play with so many different ideas before I realized the obvious. You know, that there has to be an engine inside of matter. Velocity is when something has velocity. Say these two pens, right? They're identical pens, let's just say. And when I move one, you know, and it's moving 500 miles an hour, we think it's the same pen. It didn't change. But no, it really isn't the same. If I could look inside of it, I would see that the pen has the energy in it. You know, when the space shuttle's going up, you know, the big flame is coming out of one end. Where's the energy, the equal but opposite energy? Oh, that's right, that big flame going out one end, the same kind of thing, the same kind of pressure. Okay, it's just not flaming. You don't see it. It's not on fire. But the same amount of energy is going into the shuttle. The shuttle is collecting it. Anyway. I should mark where I am, and then I don't have to do this. Okay, always okay. But I'm sure that goes for all of us. Even well-respected, admired folk with qualifications coming out of their ears, I'm sure they're only human too. Well, frankly, you can't give these people so much credit. You mentioned that Al-Kahari guy, Jim Al-Kahari. I know he's a Brit guy and all that kind of shit. And you said on his own website he admits it all sounds like mush. But when he makes videos, you know, when he does these documentaries, he talks like this shit is true. I mean, he's selling it hard, okay? And he has, you know, he did a whole 1-hour video on the two-slit experiment in a tuxedo, and the whole video was just absolute horseshit. Anyway, I'm waffling again. I like to make a reply video of sorts, otherwise it's a lot of typing and no one wants to read. But suffice to say, I hope the conversation continues, minus the insulting remarks from the moderators of that science forum thing. Well, frankly, I mean, Hathaway's remarks weren't much better. I get your test tube idea now. You've explained it live. So, again, I don't know. I just don't know on its face how, I know this is so ingrained into people's heads, but they don't admit the medium. And yet you people are perfectly comfortable with a non-medium creating like ocean waves, like stuff going up and down in the non-medium, the non-connected. I mean, where did you get the impression that photons are all stuck to each other? They drag each other places. I mean, where do you get that impression? Anyway. Yeah, I get your test tube idea now. Okay, it did cross my mind that perhaps water does have a preferred frequency to warm it up, i.e., I presume most microwave ovens are 2.5 gigahertz, question mark. That's a good question. You know, they're kind of the same as Wi-Fi, which is kind of weird. Well, anyway, let's just go on. For a specific reason. Okay, I think the reason is they don't want to have to make one of those stupid diodes and all of that crap to make what microwaves, so they want to just use a transformer. And so transformers, like, they can get up to that kind of limit, like 3 gigahertz maybe, and then they can't go much higher in terms of making a frequency. So that's the limiting factor, I think, is that they want to make a cheap gun. They don't want to have to use fancy diodes that might burn out. Alright, for a specific reason. I've not looked into it, but I presume that this is the optimum frequency for heating stuff with a high moisture content. Like I said, I think it's just they have to make a high wattage. They have to make a lot of wattage, okay, of energy at a high frequency. And so that gets you into all kinds of the thing will burn up problems, the current problem. Because how high a voltage you have to use. So they want to keep the voltage as low as they can, but they don't want the thing to electrocute people. And yet they want to have the current not burn up the whole thing too. So that, I think that's the compromise. That if they try to go too high a gigahertz, something burns up. But I'm simply guessing. I would guess microwave dielectric heating process, dielectric, whatever, in the industry choose in different frequencies for the material in question. Yeah, see, I just don't. I think water just likes to absorb energy, so I don't think water is very discriminating. I think it'll jiggle at any frequency. So I don't think it cares that much. I now know how little I know about microwave heating. If only there was time to learn everything, but I doubt I'll be the first bloke to live to be 1,000 and have read and memorized the entire internet. I think you'd have to live to be a lot older than 1,000. My goals have to be humbler. To finish making a 7 gigahertz text and complete DraftScience test to the best of my ability. Like I said, you could probably do the other experiment. Like I said, even you could use the other crappy ones, the pointing at each other thing. All you need is anything that you can put the same signal into. And then you could just move the thing in the middle, play with it. Eventually get around to showing my own ideas in the most interesting ways possible. Yes, we really should get to some of that, just because I would be interested. But anyway, maybe you shouldn't do the experiment first. Maybe you should explain what you think will happen first. I mean, that's not as much fun, because obviously you have to accept failing, to be right all the time, hoping not to look like a complete idiot. Yeah, well. It's all dangerous. But, I don't think people will be as rude to you as they are to me. So, you shouldn't have to worry about being treated quite as shabbily. Alright, so we will go to... I think I have the other holiday video here somewhere. Yeah, okay, let's go to that one and see what kind of crap is in the comments there. Alright, so this was the more polite holiday video. And 4 comments. Alright. So Mickey Farley. Asking Gary not to take criticism personally. Well, again, he didn't make criticism. He made accusations. You don't know the difference between criticism and accusations? He implied that there's some chance that I'm going to try to weasel out. Because there's somehow I have a huge record on the internet. In the 10 years I've been on the internet, I've weaseled out of things, and I've deleted my videos, and I've tried to hide my mistakes, and I'm such a fucking, creepy shyster. I mean, fuck you. That's not criticism. I mean, if he backed it up with some kind of evidence that, oh yeah, we have some sort of evidence, that Gary covers things up. But that's just such bullshit. Is asking too much, because, and I don't hesitate to say this since he has said the same of many people who disagree with his genocidal ethics. So again, because I don't think you have a right to impose suffering and torture, because you like to go to Disneyland, you don't have really a right to go drag people who hate that shit, drag them there and say, you're going to have to live here. Because you like something, you don't have a right to presume somebody else does. Because you want something, you don't have a right to presume somebody else wants it. Your arrogance doesn't have, you're not allowed to tell somebody because you like torture. You like to be tortured a little bit. That you can walk up to somebody else and stick a knife in their neck. Gee, what a horrible ethic. That's genocidal ethics. Right? Obviously, I'm not trying to genocide in the sense I'm not going based on people's genetic code. So it's another grotesque lie. So Holiday leaves this on here. Some asshole saying, like, somehow I'm a eugenicist or something, that I got some kind of Nazi motives, right? So that's on you, Holiday. You're leaving this crap on here. So if somebody calls you a pedophile on my board, I guess I have no obligation to delete it. He can only ever do anything personally because he's just a fucking cunt. Yeah, so this is a guy who, he has to, type asterisks. And somebody shouldn't say he's a gaping pussy. I mean, he can't even, I can't type the real letters. I can just imply the exact same thing. So yeah, I won't say it. Well, we know you can say it in comment sections. No one's going to do anything about it. And so he calls me a bigot. So where's my bigotry? So again, you're leaving genocidal and bigot in here. You say nothing. No reply. No nothing. You just let these assholes talk shit. Alright, so another Mickey. So another asshole who has to type more than one comment. What's amazing is not so much that Gary believes the entire universe is made of red and blue twans, right? So there's, this is probably the cowboy. So again, the idea that there's protons and electrons, they have something called charge. And the nature of that charge is because there's two forces that work exactly opposite to those two entities. And he thinks that's a preposterous idea. That can't possibly be right. Except it perfectly explains magnetism. So what's your explanation of charge, Mickey? I mean, Holiday, could you ask him in the comments section, well, what do you think charge is? What do you think the difference between an electron and a proton is? How are they different? They react fundamentally opposite ways to the forces. So how do they do that, Mickey? What's your theory, Mickey? Do you have a theory, Mickey? Huh? Anything? What's your theory, Mickey? What do you think conventional physics' theory is? Because guess what? They don't have one. They just go virtual photon, dark energy, dark matter-aton. They don't have one. They have nothing, zero. You're mocking somebody who has an idea, and you have no clue. You don't see how that's just so despicable? That you're such a low, despicable character to play a game like that? Like you have an explanation when you have nothing? You have nothing on your test paper. You're not even trying to answer the question. I at least have the balls to have an answer. Okay, that bounce together at right angles. Well, again, obviously that's not exactly what they do, but go ahead. So much that he expects everyone else to accept this as obvious. Well, I'd say the magnetism description is so good, and I'd say the gravity explanation is so good that, yeah, I expect people to recognize that, oh, gee, that's a lot simpler than magical bent geometry, and it certainly makes more sense than some virtualaton that doesn't even explain anything. It's just a word. Virtual fawn. Virtual. Virtual. How does that explain why it attracts and why it repels? Why do magnets attract and repel? Could you explain it to me, Mickey? Please? Could Holiday maybe ask you to... Why do you think magnets repel and attract? How do they do that? Why don't you ask him, Holiday? Anyway, without any experimental confirmation whatsoever, oh, except that every experiment fits my theory. So I keep citing every experiment. I just show you. So where haven't I done that? I play videos of experiments. I show, yeah, look, it fits. This explanation explains why the magnet just did that. I play the Professor Lewin's entire series of lectures. I play all of them. And say how, look, there's nothing in these experiments that conflicts with what I'm saying. Amazing. I mean, it's just an amazing lie. I mean, I sit there doing more work confirming and explaining than anyone has ever done in the history of physics, frankly. And this asshole is saying I somehow, without any experimental confirmation. When I'm pointing out that, no, the coil, yeah, it's doing exactly what my theory would predict, which is the energy is getting trapped and reflecting. I pointed out that resonance is doing that. That's what a resonator is doing. It's filtering out the stuff that isn't destructive. So anything that isn't destructively interfering, that is, one thing's going up, the other thing's going down, it destroys itself. That's the stuff that keeps reflecting. It keeps bouncing back and forth. It doesn't leave the chamber. The only stuff that leaves is the stuff that destructively interferes. Oh, amazing. I've asked him several times to explain why matter is held together. You haven't done any such thing. Where? Show me the quote where you ever did that. Show me. Quote the bullshit that you ever typed that asked me a question. I mean, it's such an easy answer. Because there's pressure hitting it from all directions. Every single millisecond, everything is being bombarded by a ton of energy. Holy shit. In his theory, and he never answered it. What a liar. To say I don't answer questions is just such a lie. A preposterous lie. Anyway, so added intentional inconsistency. So add intentional inconsistency to the list of problems with his theory. So how did people, why are you letting somebody lie like this, right, Hathaway? So I like I said, I should say, oh, I'm a good bloke. I'm a fair cop. I'm a nice guy. But yeah, I'm going to let a bunch of Nazi talkers and shit talk in my comment trash about you as if I agree with them. His theory doesn't even create attraction between a proton and an electron. Well, except for the fact that the way the attraction is created is by every time something moves towards something else, it's absorbing the energy that would have hit the other thing. Right? So it's kind of obvious that, oh, so all that energy never hit the other thing. So, yeah. Anyway, despite his claims, because bits coming from the sides will just fill in the middle zone between the proton and the electron. So it's this thing is kind of a see, things have a choice, right? You could say if something goes this way, and you could say, well, what's perpendicular to that? Well, this way, this way, this way, this way. So there's 360 degrees of perpendicular, right? You can sort of get that. So when you say something could hit something and it's going to go perpendicular, it means it can go one of 360 degrees of locations. Yeah, and but you can cut those into dimensions, right, left, or forward, back, and make it simpler. All right, so you could cut it into 4-dimensional segments. And the other thing would only be in one of those dimensional segments, so you sort of understand that only 1/4 of the energy that comes from these other locations could possibly hit that location. But we already used up the one going this way, right? So we know that we've already changed the probability odds. Basically, we absorbed this one when we moved towards the other guy. So there won't be any energy going in here and coming out perpendicularly, right? No, anyway. These are stuff I have explained in videos. It's just a lie. That's all you can say is, okay, just keep lying, mindless. See how to say it again. The reflection argument is the one that makes it so obvious, right? Because I can say, you can really understand what, you know, everything's getting hit by the same amount of energy all the time from all directions. So you can sort of understand the shadow argument that if they get closer to each other, all right, there's no way that straight line force, okay, can get to this guy when this guy gets close enough, right? Just can't do it, can't hit it. And it can't, likewise, the same thing happens in here. So you can sort of understand that attraction thing. But if the force was reflecting, like they were both mirrors to this force, then you can understand the opposite happens in the sense that it just keeps reflecting. So one bit just keeps making energy. It's like it has perpetual energy in the sense that if it's this far away, there's 100 pressures. And if it's this close, then there's 200 pressures. And if it's this close, there's 400 pressures. Because it's caught, it's stuck in there. And so it's going to create repulsion. So you can understand why the electrons and the proton, electrons repel each other and protons repel each other because they've got the force trapped. Now the idea is when I switch it around, I say it's proton and electron. Then the idea is you can understand nothing can now reflect. So now all you have, okay, is the idea that they're both getting hit by force from all directions. All right, and nothing can get reflected in here. So you can't have any force to compensate for the fact that as they move towards each other, they absorb the force that would have hit them. So again, you're back to the point that now they're going to have to move into each other because the external force is going to be stronger than the internal force. Okay. Yeah. All right. So this dystonia, some girl thing apparently. These people who say "Gare Bear," what the hell does that even mean? what is that trideism stuff? I mean, it's so, oh God, that's so creepy. You know, that's like when women say something like, "Oh, come to mama." You know, like that's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, that's really sexy. Come to mama." No. Sorry, that creeps the fuck out of me. And somebody called me Gare Bear. No. Anyway, response to you, and he seems even more unhinged than usual. No, it's the exact usual amount of being so sick of people with these hypocritical standards. I mean, the hypocrisy is just gross. So this stupid dystonia moron, she left some comment on my other video. Where, yeah, I'll look over here. All right, you so smart, Gary. Now back it up with some real-world credentials. And then does some kind of winky face. What the fuck is that rag? When Einstein was in the patent office again, would you say that to him? Don't bother publishing, Mr. Einstein. Don't even express your opinion about anything because you're a patent clerk, fucker. Yeah. My credentials, I've already listed them. I mean, yeah, I was playing with electronics since I was a kid. I worked at a machine shop. I worked as an auto mechanic. I worked as a plumber. I worked as an electrician. I have plenty of real-world experience and credentials. I mean, you're just a cunt. Yeah, fuck this shit. I'm just gonna block her. Fuck this shit. This is bullshit. Obviously, you don't understand any of these subjects and can't figure out how to make an argument yourself. So why don't you explain how magnets attract and repel? How does it happen? How does that happen? Huh? And how does the photons jump to another location when they're destructively interfering? They're supposed to be destructively interfering, right? I mean, push and pull. They're supposed to be going hot and cold and turn into nothing. Why don't you explain how that means they jump somewhere? Alright, you're not going to get through to him, but if you enjoy flogging a dead horse, then power to ya. Winky sign again. Yeah. So again, you're not going to get through to him. You know, get what through to me? That he can make photons freeze in space? Oh, you're never going to convince Gary that you can make photons freeze in space. Yeah, you're not. They're going the speed of light. I mean, I just don't know how you think they're going to stay in one place when they're going the speed of light in a direction. Their entire momentum, substance, entity is completely dependent on them moving the speed of light in a direction. So how the fuck are they going to stand somewhere and just say, I'm a photon going up and down? How are they going to do that? Shit. Alright. So now, do we want to do that? Now I'll wait for the Khan Academy till some other time, I think. Might as well. Might as well not mix the subjects too much. But they emphasize again, the electricity in the antenna is all positive. There's no negative portion. The antenna doesn't receive north-south like magnetic information. It doesn't have any polarity except one, on and off. Voltage or no voltage. That's it. There's no negative voltage. The photon, in all respects that we ever see, never hits something and takes away energy. You know, uns it or something. Gives it non-momentum. There's no non-momentaton. So you can't argue that a photon is, you know, pushing and then also pulling. And that somehow when they're destructive and interfering, it means it pushed on one side and it pulled on the other side, so it didn't make it move. You know, that it's yin and yanging. There's absolutely no evidence that you can make photons yin and photon yang. You know, push and pull tons. There's just no evidence for any of this crap. And you people to be so arrogant and saying, Gary must believe, or he's an asshole for not getting this obvious point that photons are obviously bipolar, and they obviously have hot side and a cold side, and they have an upside and a downside, and they have a pressure side and an unpressure side. Unpressure, whatever unpressure is, right? It's not like there's zero pressure, but there has to be unpressure. You know, you know, they're fat and ultra thin. I mean, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. Fuck. To be so rude when they have such they have no theory. They have nothing. And they're sitting here being so obnoxious. Alright, so enough of a video. So till the next shitty time and such. And so forth and whatnot. Yeah, this really was enough. An hour. Holy shit. Needed to be done.